Let's talk about prints, patterns, and personal color analysis. Hello, welcome to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Tristan Cappel, and I like to make videos about personal color analysis, personality, and more. I'm a professional opera singer and a voice teacher, and I really love 12 Seasons personal color analysis. I love personality typing. I love all things art and beauty and wonderful things that make us happy. And I hope to dive into all of those things on my channel. So thank you for being here, and I hope you will consider subscribing before you head out. Today we are going to be talking about how to choose a print or a pattern for your season. What makes up a pattern or a print? What are the different parameters? And how do they create an impression and create harmony or disharmony with our season? So let's get started. Let's do an overview of the parameters for prints and patterns. So firstly, we have scale, then density, and then dimension, which when I've done the math and what makes sense to me is scale plus density, and you get dimension. Then we have contrast, color dominance, and then overall color harmony and impression. So going into that a little bit, scale is the overall size of the object or pattern on a clothing medium, a piece of fabric. So if we're looking, for instance, at a floral dress, the scale of the flower would be how big or small that flower is. You could have macro flowers that take up a big swath of the dress, or you could have little teeny tiny dainty flowers, and that is the scale of the pattern. Then after that we have density. So that is how far apart or close together the objects in the print or the pattern are. So a very dense floral pattern will have the flowers very, very close together on the fabric, and a less dense floral pattern will have the flowers spread out a little bit more, so there will be a little bit more negative space. Then let's talk about dimension, which in my brain, it makes sense that this is scale plus density. We create dimension in a pattern by combining the scale and the density. So you could have a large scale pattern with low density, which means that there will be a lot of negative space, which creates more dimension in the pattern. You could also have a small scale pattern with high density, so there's a lot less dimension because the objects that make up the pattern are really close together. Which means it's a little bit less dimensional. Does that make sense? Okay, I hope I'm explaining that well. But there's lots of variations in between, right? You could have like medium scale and medium density. You could have medium scale with low density. The combinations are endless, but that is dimension. Oh, and we'll get into this a little bit later on, and I'll show some examples, but the smaller the scale and the higher the density, so the less dimension, the more visual blurring or muting of the colors you will get from an impression point of view. And we'll get to impression soon. And when the scale is higher and there's less density, so there's more space between the objects and the objects are bigger, we are going to get less of a blurring effect from a distance. You'll see more contrast between the background and the object. So that leads me to contrast. So contrast is the separation between the colors and noticeable differences between light and dark. And we find this in a couple different ways. It could be light or dark, or it could be opposite colors on the color spectrum. So for example, blue and yellow would create some contrast in a pattern. And a pattern that has low contrast will have a lot of blend from one color to another. So think like watercolor or tie-dye patterns, or colors that are really close to each other on the color wheel. So for instance, like a red and pink pattern of the same value will have low contrast overall. The next parameter would be color dominance. So what is the overall color that takes precedence over the pattern? So if, for instance, we are looking at a polka dot pattern like this one, what's the dominant color? It's black, right? Because we have like little white dots on there. Same thing with this skirt, actually. another floral pattern, but the dominant color on this skirt is black because that's the background. And when we're trying to choose a pattern for our season, we want to look at that dominant color and figure out what color does that season belong to. Does it belong to our palette or does it belong to something else? Because that is the color that is going to stand out the most and create the most impression when someone is looking at you in a pattern that you're wearing. And that brings me to overall color harmony and impression created by the print. So when choosing a pattern for your season, the best pattern that you could choose is one that contains only colors from your palette. So say we're looking at a floral pattern in True Summer. We want it to contain all of those mid-value, cool, muted colors that are true cool, and we don't want it to contain any pops of like orange or hot pink or red because that will throw off the overall color balance. So the best choice would be to pick something that harmonizes overall with your palette. And one way to do this, and maybe I can demonstrate, is to take your fan, your color fan, if you have one, if you've been draped, and you just spread it out and plop it down on whatever pattern you're looking at and see if the fan kind of blends in with the pattern or if there are things that pop out or stand against it. Do they harmonize or are they fighting against one another? So let's go to the next level down, choosing a pattern that is still good, but maybe not perfect. You want to choose a pattern that is mainly colors from your season, but maybe contains a couple small instances of some colors that are not harmonious or are from another season. I have some good examples of this, actually. Let me find that. Here is a little dress that I actually made myself. This fabric I thought was super fun. It's really colorful, but it does contain some instances of warm yellow and maybe some orange. But overall, the impression that I get when I look at this is I see a lot of blue and purple, a lot of red, black. It's mostly bright winter colors, so when I hold it up against myself, I find that it still seems pretty harmonious. It doesn't detract too much. And also the straps, if I were to wear it, are pretty, the color's not too close to my face, so I'm not gonna get a lot of that orange or yellow creating any optical illusions or shadows on my face. So this is a pattern that is not perfect, but it's still pretty good for my season. Here's another dress that I picked out from my closet. As you can see, the flowers in this pattern are a little bit too warm for me. There's some golden yellows, creams, and the greens are also a little bit warm in comparison to my palette. But if you look at the background, it is in my palette, so I still get away with wearing it even if it's a little too warm. Okay, let's talk about patterns that are okay, but not great for your season. So if you're looking at a pattern, you see that the dominant color, maybe the background, is in your season. So let's say you're a true autumn, the background is olive green. But then there's a large presence of disharmonious color. Let's say it's olive green with like cobalt blue on top, or it could even be like bright white, maybe. There's a large presence of bright white on this olive green background. So it's gonna look not as harmonious on you, but it could be made better by the scale. So let's say the presence of the white flowers are small in scale, or white polka dots even. Let's say it's an olive green dress with little white polka dots. that you're going to be able to get away with pretty well without disrupting your overall color harmony. But if the scale of the object on the pattern is much bigger and it's taking up a lot more of the dress, it's not going to be as great on you as, say, something that was all in your colors. Same for seasons that require a little bit more definition and contrast. So I'm thinking clear seasons like winter and spring. If the pattern is too dense, say maybe it has all the right colors for you, it's a bunch of dots, but the dots are really small and they're concentrated together, it's going to make the impression from far away appear a little bit more soft and muted because of the way our eye blends colors when they are farther away from us and when they are smaller. So it would be better to choose a pattern that has a little bit more large scale or maybe less colors going on so that the overall impression is not of a muted or soft appearance. Okay, and then a pattern that would be not great to choose is where the dominant color is not at all in your palette and there's very small instances of colors that are harmonious with you and are in your palette. That would be a pattern that isn't going to look great. So let's say you are a bright winter and the background of the pattern is like a camely beige and then it has, hot pink and green squares on it. I actually saw a dress like this. Though the small squares will harmonize with your coloring, the overall effect, that beige, is going to be what takes precedence and is going to kind of drag you down and mute you. Here's an example of a shirt I pulled from my husband's closet. He's a true autumn. There's some true autumn navies in this shirt, but as you can see, his reds are a lot warmer than the red that's found in this shirt. The red is really cool, so it's not going to be his best option. There's also a lot of white in this shirt as well, so it won't totally harmonize with him. It's a little too cool. Okay, friends, thanks for sticking with me so far. I just wanted to leave you with a few general shopping guidelines for your core season. So if you are a winter, you're going to want to go for patterns that have high contrast overall, and less is more with the colors. So maybe limit it to 2 or 3 colors in the pattern. And then you want to go for clear edges and bold geometrics. Those defined lines look really good on winters. If you're a spring, colorful and playful patterns look really good, as well as adjacent colors on the color wheel. So like orange and pink or blue and green looks really good on springs. And then you want to aim for medium contrast in the pattern. As a summer, a blended watercolor, ombre, or tie-dye pattern will look really good. Some painted looking florals will look really nice, and you want to go for low contrast overall. As an autumn, layering of colors looks really good, so imitating those scenes found in a autumn nature like leaves on the ground. Also, geometric retro patterns will look really good, and you want to go for medium to low contrast as an autumn. I'm going to stick this in somewhere, but I want to talk about the dress that I have on today because I think this is a really good example of how to choose a pattern for your season. So as a bright winter, I'm trying to find a pattern that has a background color that is dominantly in my season. So I found this, and it is a red in my season. The scale of the pattern is pretty large, and it's also not very dense. It's also not very dense. I'm feeling like I'm a little dense today. The pattern is pretty spread out. It creates some good contrast. The edges of the pattern are pretty sharp too, and there's some dark moments happening in here. The only thing that is not quite right is there are some, There's some like peachy pink flowers in here. So those don't fully harmonize with my season, but overall, what you see mostly when you look at this pattern is the contrast between the red and the cobalt blue, and then this bright teal, and then there's some white and dark navy. And overall, it creates a nice bright winter impression. So that's why I chose this pattern. Same thing with the dress behind me. It is a blue and white large scale floral pattern. It's very dense, but because it is so large scale, and there is space between the blue and white and it's not very blended, it creates that nice amount of contrast that is necessary for a bright winter to really pop. So that's why I brought her with me today. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you learned a lot about patterns and what makes patterns different from each other and how to shop and look for patterns that would be best for your season. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing before you head out. It helps more people like you see this content. And if you'd like to see any other videos or have any suggestions for me, please let me know. Remember to be extra kind and loving of yourself today and be open to all of the wonderful possibilities that are available to you in your life. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.